When most people think of Roman roads, they imagine merchants hauling goods from one city to another, traders moving wine and olive oil, the lifeblood of ancient commerce connecting the Mediterranean world. That's not why Rome built them. The Romans constructed over 250,000 miles of roads across their empire. 29 great highways radiated out from the capital like spokes on a wheel. Some of these roads are still in use today, 2,000 years later. But they weren't built for trade. They were built for war. The first great Roman road, the Via Appia, was commissioned in 312 BC by a Roman official named Appius Claudius Caecus. Rome was fighting the Second Samnite War, a brutal conflict in the mountains of central Italy. The Via Appia was designed as a military supply route, allowing legions and equipment to move quickly from Rome to the front lines. It worked. Rome won the war, and they learned something crucial. Roads weren't just useful for moving armies. They were weapons in themselves. By the height of the empire, Rome had built over 400,000 kilometers of roads. About 80,000 kilometers were paved in stone. The rest were gravel military roads. Every major road connected military garrisons, frontier posts, and strategic locations. The famous saying, "All roads lead to Rome," wasn't about tourism. It was about control. Any rebellion anywhere in the empire could be crushed by legions marching from the capital. And the roads were fast. A Roman legion could march 20 to 25 miles per day on these roads. In emergencies, mounted messengers could cover over 150 miles in a single day. Information moved at the speed of a galloping horse, and armies moved faster than any enemy could prepare for. The Romans built their roads arrow straight, not because it looked impressive, but because straight lines meant speed. While other civilizations built roads that curved around hills and followed valleys, Roman engineers surveyed perfectly straight routes and built directly over obstacles. If a hill was in the way, they went over it. If a river blocked the path, they bridged it. Speed mattered more than comfort. The engineering was brutal and brilliant. Roman roads were built in layers. First, workers dug a trench and filled it with large foundation stones called the stadamen. Then came layers of smaller stones, gravel and sand, all compacted together. Finally, the top layer, the summa dorsum, was paved with precisely cut stones, fitted so tightly that grass couldn't grow between them. The road surface was slightly crowned in the middle so water would drain off to the sides. These were just roads. They were monuments to Roman endurance. And here's something interesting. The Roman legions built them. Between military campaigns, soldiers were put to work on road construction. It kept them fit, maintained discipline, and gave Rome free labor for one of history's greatest engineering projects. Soldiers trained in surveying, stonework, and engineering. Special units called architecti, chief builders, led the construction crews. Emperor Augustus famously kept his legions busy building roads even in peacetime. An idle army was a dangerous army, but the real test of these roads came during crisis. And in 60 AD, Roman Britain faced one of the worst crises in its history. The governor of Britain, Suetonius Paulinus, was 250 miles away in North Wales. He was leading a campaign against the Druids on Anglesey, a religious center and a source of resistance against Roman rule. While he was occupied in the far north, trouble erupted in the south. The Iceni tribe, led by their queen Boudica, rose in revolt. The Romans had seized Iceni lands, flogged Boudica publicly, and assaulted her daughters. It was a catastrophic miscalculation. Boudica rallied not just the Iceni, but other British tribes. Her rebel army swelled to over 100,000 warriors. They struck fast. The Roman city of Camulodunum, modern-day Colchester, was first. The city had no walls. Roman settlers and veterans were slaughtered. The rebels burned it to the ground. Archaeologists have found a layer of burned red clay beneath Colchester that marks the destruction. It's still there, 2,000 years later. Next was Londinium, modern London, a prosperous trading port with a large civilian population. When news of Boudica's approach reached the city, Suetonius was already racing south, but he arrived with only a small cavalry force. He assessed the situation and made a cold decision. He couldn't defend London. He evacuated anyone who could march and abandoned the city. Boudica's army destroyed it, burned it completely. Then they moved on to Verulamium, now St. Albans, another Roman city, another massacre. Ancient historians estimate that 70,000 to 80,000 Romans and Britons loyal to Rome were killed in these attacks. It was one of the worst military disasters in Roman history. Roman Britain was on the edge of collapse, but Suetonius had used the time wisely. He had marched his legions down Watling Street, one of the great Roman roads running northwest from London. He gathered every available soldier. In total, he had about 10,000 men. Boudica's rebel army was at least 100,000 strong, possibly more. The Romans were outnumbered 10 to 1. Suetonius chose the battlefield carefully. A location along Watling Street with a narrow approach, protected by forests on the flanks and high ground at the rear. The British would have to attack uphill through a funnel. Their numbers would mean nothing. The battle was a slaughter. Roman discipline and positioning crushed the British charge. When the rebels tried to retreat, their own supply wagons blocked the escape routes. Ancient sources claim 80,000 Britons died. Roman casualties were around 400. Boudica poisoned herself shortly after. Roman Britain survived. And it survived because Suetonius Paulinus could march a legion 250 miles in a matter of days and position his forces exactly where they needed to be. Without the roads, the response would have taken weeks. Without the roads, there would have been no Roman Britain. This wasn't an isolated case. The roads allowed Rome to respond to threats across an empire that stretched from Scotland to the Sahara, from Spain to Syria. When Emperor Marcus Aurelius faced invasions on the Danube frontier, roads moved legions from Britain, Spain, and North Africa to reinforce the border. When rebellion broke out in Judea, Roman forces converged from Egypt, Syria, and Asia Minor. The empire functioned because information and armies moved faster than rebellion could spread. But there was an unintended consequence. Trade did flourish on these military roads. Merchants followed the legions. Markets sprang up near garrison towns. Goods moved across the empire on infrastructure built for war. Roman roads connected the ancient world in ways no previous civilization had managed. Ideas traveled too. Philosophy, literature, religion. Thank you for watching. Please like, subscribe, share, and comment.